Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where I aim to break down each and every single team's 2020 NFL Draft. We're going to do it a little different this season as I've switched up the grading scale, switched up the way that I do things, going to try to get through these draft picks and drafts in general as fast as I possibly can, as efficiently as I possibly can. It's going to be tough doing this particular team's draft, however, because this is one of the most robust drafts I've ever seen. 15 selections made by the Minnesota Vikings in the 2020 NFL Draft. So a lot to break down, and we'll get to that here in a second. But I will say this, if there was any team that I thought could have this many picks in one particular draft, it'd be the Minnesota Vikings and maybe the Seattle Seahawks. Those are the two teams that usually go with volume and quantity over quality a lot of times, and they throw as many darts at the dartboard to see how many can stick. And it's what Rick Spielman has done over the life of his career as the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, rather building this team through the draft and not really spending as much resources into free agency. So this isn't new. It's not something that is foreign to the Vikings, but 15 picks is a ton of guys. But it just goes to show you just how different this Vikings roster is going to look in the upcoming season. A lot of turnover, a lot of change for this Vikings football team. Lost a lot of players in free agency this offseason, especially in the secondary. Also, a massive trade, shipping off beleaguered wide receiver Stefon Diggs to the Buffalo Bills, and that kind of set off the chain of events that would shape and mold this Vikings draft, having 15 selections. So they absolutely need to do some work at receiver. The secondary, they lost 3 members of that secondary in free agency, not to mention moving on from some guys as well. So a lot of turnover on that team. No more Everson Griffin on the defensive line. So a lot of things have to change, and they needed to bring in a fresh new influx of players. They did that in this draft. Let's see how they were able to fare in the 2020 NFL Draft as we break down the draft of the Minnesota Vikings. Let's take a look at what they were able to do. So we take a look at their draft. These are all 15 of the players that they selected in what I've already told you is one of the most robust draft classes I've ever seen. I can't recall a team making 15 selections in one draft. Usually 12 is that number. When they get really high, you're like, God damn, 12 picks? That's a lot of guys. And, you know, when you get to anywhere over 10 picks in a draft, you're going to have multiple 7th rounders more likely than not. And the Vikings definitely have a slew of 7th rounders. We'll get to them a little bit later on. But let's get to the guys that you expect to have an immediate impact in this draft. And we start with their first pick in this draft. And they had multiple first rounders, but the first of which was wide receiver Justin Jefferson. First round, 22nd pick overall. This is a guy here in Jefferson. And I've got my write-ups for all of these players that I was able to do. So I'll be looking off of my write-ups for each of these players. Like I said, Justin Jefferson for me was a steal for the Minnesota Vikings in the first round. I did not expect him to be on the board at the time of this selection. As a matter of fact, I thought that he would be gone no later than the pick right before the Vikings in the first round at 21 to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles had other plans, went in a different direction, same position, different direction. And I thought you got a steal and were the biggest beneficiaries of the Eagles deciding to select wide receiver Jalen Reagor out of TCU. Justin Jefferson, 6'1", 202 pounds, ran a 4.43 at the combine. LSU wide receiver, destroyed college football in his final season there. This is a guy that set all kinds of records, 111 catches for 1,540 yards and 18 scores at LSU in his final campaign. This was a guy that I deemed to be a first-round pick. I gave him a first-round grade. He was my number 4 wide receiver on the board, and I'll tell you the player that I comp him to when we get to the end of his breakdown. However, let's get to his strengths quickly. Good size at 6'1", 202, especially for him being more of a slot. I think he's a guy that can move outside. I think everyone's pigeonholing him as a slot guy because that's where he did most of his damage at LSU. But I think he can move around, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them move him inside and outside. Tremendous length and catch radius. This is a guy that uses his length and his catch radius to snag balls outside of his frame. So that's something else you'll be able to enjoy. A pass that may be a little errant, maybe a little low, maybe a little high, maybe a little behind him. He's going to be able to make those types of catches because he's got good length and a really solid catch radius. Outstanding hands, one of the more reliable pass catchers in all of college football in 2019 and in this entire draft. Again, 111 catches speaks for itself. You got that many grabs in one season. It tells you that he's making a lot of plays, but also he's a reliable guy that the quarterback trusts to get him the football in some tough situations. Really good route running ability. Again, when you're in the slot, that's got to be one of your traits, your ability to separate and run accurate, crisp, sharp routes. He does that. That's why this guy was one of the go-to wide receivers at LSU for Joe Burrow. Catching traffic. I just talked about outstanding hands. A lot of times, guys that have outstanding hands are going to catch it in traffic very well. That's when you really get to see a guy showcase his hands, is when he's catching it in a crowd. Can he secure the football? Justin Jefferson does that routinely. Have no questions about his ability to catch it in traffic with his hands, not his body. So I think his ability to do that is really exceptional. Fluid movement and body control. This is something that's underrated with him. You don't hear a lot of people talk about his body control and how he moves on the field. He moves very gracefully. You know, a lot of people talk about the lack of explosion with Justin Jefferson. Does he have deep speed? I think the 4.43 speaks for itself. But when you watch him on tape, the Texas game and that catch to put the game away, he runs by defenders there. When you watch him in specific instances, you see his ability to move on the football field. And so that speed element that people think he lacks, I don't think he lacks. And also, you see that fluidity and the movement that he moves with ease on the football field, has tremendous body control to adjust to catches. As I mentioned, that catch radius, some of that goes to his body control and his ability to contort his body in the air to adjust to a throw wherever it may be. Tracks the football extremely well over the shoulder. As I mentioned, that's part of that catch radius that I mentioned, because the ball could be anywhere. He'll go and get it. You can throw it up to him. He'll go track it down in the air, make a play on it. So again, does all of the things you like from a premier wide receiver in this very deep wide receiver draft class. Stays alive as an option. The one thing we noticed with Joe Burrow in his Heisman Trophy campaign in 2019 was that a lot of off-schedule, big-time plays made by Joe Burrow. That's not done alone, though, as a quarterback. You have to have receivers that are able to keep the play alive. The quarterback is only as good as his wide receivers in terms of off-schedule plays. And one of the better wide receivers in all of college football in terms of the off-schedule staying alive play is Justin Jefferson. And so that's something else he brings to the table. Not that you have a quarterback that's necessarily going to allow him to take advantage of that, but Kirk can move a little bit better than people give him credit for. So I think that's something else you should be excited about as a Vikings fan. Ridiculous production. I just told you what the numbers were. Cartoonish in 2019, 111 grabs, 1,540 yards receiving for 18 touchdowns. That's a career for a lot of guys. He did it in one season. And so a lot of good characteristics and traits there from Justin Jefferson. As you get to his weaknesses, can improve his functional strength. When you watch him, sometimes he struggles with press coverage. You watch him against Alabama. There were some times they got up in his mug and his grill a bit and made him uncomfortable at the line of scrimmage. And you watch him sometimes struggle with physicality at the point of catch sometimes. So I would like to see him get a little bit stronger. I don't necessarily know if that's in his DNA or not, which is fine by me. He finds ways to create separation and get to the football. So I'd like to see him get a little bit stronger, however. Is he more than just a slot option? I think that's a reasonable question to ask, because a lot of his damage at LSU, a vast majority of it, came in the slot. And so you have to ask yourself, is he just a slot guy or can he move outside? I'd like to think that he can move around in the formation and play just about anywhere on the football field as a wide receiver. But a lot of people tried to put him in a box and say he's only a slot guy. And maybe that's why he was able to fall to you. And he didn't fall very far. You know, it's not like this guy was supposed to go in the top 10 and fell to you at 22. I thought he was going to come off the board at 21. You got him at 22. I feel like that's a really big steal for you, because after him, I felt like there was a little bit of a drop off in terms of elite type wide receivers in this draft. And it wasn't a precipitous drop off. You weren't going off a cliff, but I thought he was the last of the best at the receiver position in this draft. And you were able to get him and secure him at 22. I feel like he can be better at the 50-50 ball. That's really not his strength. He's not the guy that's going to necessarily go up and climb the ladder and snatch the football away from a defender. He can do that, but I don't think that's his forte. That's not the thing he's looking to do. Again, generally, guys in the slot aren't looking to be beast in the slot in terms of going up and climbing the ladder. There are only a select few that do that from the slot. He's more of a guy that's a finesse wide receiver, going to break you off on a route, get open, run after the catch, sit down in zone coverage, find those holes in the zone, separate from man-to-man coverage. Those types of things he excels at. So not necessarily sure if he's a guy that can go up and get the 50-50 ball. And does he play at his time speed consistently? That's a question that a lot of people have. I think he's fine in that regard, but some people think that he doesn't necessarily play at the 4.43 speed that he ran at the combine. I beg to differ. I've seen the flashes of speed. Is he always playing at that speed? No. But does he have that ability to play at that speed? Yes, and I think that's something that the Vikings will take advantage of at the next level. And then you also have to factor in only one true year of dominant production, but I think that's more so catered towards the lack of quarterback production at LSU. We've seen them struggle at the quarterback position for years, hell, decades, really, at LSU until Joe Burrow came along and lit it up this past year. So I really don't harp on the lack of production as much, but what a season turned in by Justin Jefferson. What a wide receiver, and what a get for the Minnesota Vikings. I comp him to Davante Adams, a wide receiver out of Green Bay, who is a stellar pass catcher. You guys know all too well in the division how good Davante Adams is. I think you have your own version of Davante Adams now here in Justin Jefferson. I had him ranked as my 4th receiver in this draft. He was the 5th receiver taken in this draft. I think you got a steal here. And because of that, I think this is a 5 here in terms of the pick of Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota Vikings in the first round. Scale goes from 5 to 1, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest in terms of a selection. And so that's a 5 for me in the pick of Justin Jefferson. As we move on to the next pick in this draft for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's that of cornerback Jeff Gladney out of TCU. Here's a guy that was the 31st pick in the first round. Vikings traded back in the first round, picked up more picks. As you will see, 15 selections. They had to do some work maneuvering around the draft to pick up more selections, and this was one of the times that they moved back. They picked Jeff Gladney, cornerback out of TCU, 5'10", 191 pounds, ran a 4.48 at the combine. This is a guy with immense potential, physical corner, plays the game in a very aggressive manner. I think that's something that probably attracted him to the Minnesota Vikings. I had him rated as my 6th corner in this draft. He was the 6th corner taken. I had a 2nd round grade on him. He goes late first round, so not that big of a deal in terms of where you got him and if it was a reach or not, in my estimation. 1.5 tackles for loss, a half a sack in this past season. No forced fumbles, but 14 pass breakups, 1 interception in 12 games. For his career, 6 tackles for loss, a sack and a half in his career, 1 forced fumble, 38 pass breakups, 5 interceptions. So there is some ball skills and ball production there. And there is a pick 6 in there as well with those 5 interceptions. That was his total in 50 contests at TCU. So I'll give you my player comp for him a little bit later on, but his strengths: not afraid to be physical at the line of scrimmage. This is a guy that will get in your face, delete the airspace, and come up and try to disrupt you at the line of scrimmage. As I told you, physical brand of football, not afraid to be aggressive with these wide receivers, loves to be a disruptive force at the line of scrimmage, and that's one of the things I like about him, and I think that's one of the things that your head coach, Mike Zimmer probably liked as well. Willing tackler. This is a guy, again, not afraid to mix it up, will get in there, make tackles, and that's something you have to be able to do if you're going to play for Mike Zimmer. And so willing tackler. That's something he brings to the table. Capable blitzer. I talked about him having a sack and a half in his career. He's a guy that you can blitz off the corner, and he's a guy that's very adept at blitzing. So that's something I see the Vikings potentially taking advantage of at the next level. Can play boundary corner, left or right, or in the slot. And that was one of the things I liked about watching tape on a lot of these corners in this year's draft. In past year's drafts, you'd see a guy just stay on one side of the field, would not travel, would not go into the slot. It's scary in there. A lot of these boundary corners want no parts of the slot. But when you're a smaller corner like Jeff Gladney at 5'10", 191, you should be able to move around and be versatile, and he was able to do that. Left, right, slot, didn't matter. He was available if the team needed him to move around. Read and react route recognition, or as I like to call it, the 4 R's. Read, react, route recognition. High-low route concepts from zone, he recognizes that very well. One of the picks I saw him snag in 2019, I want to say it was versus Purdue, if I'm not mistaken. He's reading the quarterback's eyes, doesn't really have a responsibility. They tried to run a high-low concept on his side where they have a shallow breaking route in front of his face to kind of attract his eyes and maybe make him move up, kind of allow him to come up on that and open up a zone behind him. Well, he doesn't bite the bait, and he gives up that early. If you want that underneath throw, you can have it. I'll come up, make the tackle. But what you're not going to do is throw something over the top of my head. He sags underneath that route behind him on that high-low concept and falls right into a pick. So he understands route combinations, what the other team is trying to do to him, especially from zone coverage. And so that's something that I like. Plant and drive ability. He's one of those guys when he sees it, if he's squared up and you're running a slant, he'll stick his foot in the ground and drive on that football and be able to break it up or maybe even pick it off. So he's one of those guys with that plant and drive ability. And that's one of the traits that elite corners have. It's the difference between an average corner and elite corner in this league is your ability to plant and drive on the football. That's one of the big things. That also in being an LLCer, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. He trusts his eyes. What he sees in front of him, he trusts and he reacts to it. Sometimes that can get you into trouble as a corner because if you trust your eyes too much and you're being a little too nosy, they can use that against you. But he's one of those guys that trusts his eyes, so you're not going to get a lot of easy completions in front of him because when he sees it, he reacts to it. So that's something I like about him. Plays zone or man. He's comfortable in either situation. Not one of these guys that is the strict zone man, zone cover, and cover corner and can't really play man, and not the other way around. A guy that only can play press man or man and really can't play zone. He's capable of doing both. And he's a fluid mover, a guy that moves around the field very easily. His athleticism is on full display. You watch this guy do some of the things he does on the field, and you see that he's a guy that doesn't have a problem getting in and out of breaks, back pedals, that kind of thing. He's a fluid mover on the football field. Get to his weaknesses, his size. I hate to pigeonhole guys, but it's a new day and age in the NFL. 5'10" didn't used to be a problem at the cornerback position, but with these guys coming in the league at 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" now, it's harder and harder to put a 5'10" corner out wide. Now, if that guy's an athlete and he's a competitor, you can get away with it. But generally speaking, it's tough to put a 5'10" corner on a 6'3" wide receiver with that has length and the ability to go up and get the football. It's just tough for those guys to cover. They can be right there, and if the ball's put in a place where they can't get it, it's just tough. So size is a question mark for him. Can be a bit of a face guarder down the field. That's one of the things I really don't like about Jeff Gladney, which is why I pegged him as a second-round pick. Everything looks first-roundish to me outside of his size in the fact that this guy is a face guarder. And that leads to my next weakness. Lacks LLC properties. LLC for me, if you haven't followed me, locate and contest. As a corner, if you don't look for the football, you can't locate it. If you don't locate the ball, you can't contest it. And you may be able to swipe at the receiver's hands and react to the receiver, but more times than not, that's going to get you into trouble. All right, that's going to get you a flag. If you don't look back, if you're very physical with the receiver, but you look back for the football, officials will let you get away with physical play. It's when you don't look back for the ball and you're being aggressive and physical with a receiver at the point of catch, that's when they're going to usually throw the yellow hanky. So he's a guy that lacks those LLC properties, does not look back for the football enough for my liking, is a bit of a face guarder, and I think that's going to get him into trouble at the next level. He's also one of those guys that loves to turn around and look, to me, from the wrong shoulder. I was always taught as a defensive back in phase with the wide receiver to turn over your inside shoulder. You know, now with the advent of the back shoulder fade, that's the only time I feel like you should be looking outside shoulder is when you're expecting back shoulder fade. If you've done your homework, and you know that's one of their go-to routes, 3rd and 7, they like to go to the back shoulder fade, then you play him, face guard him, and look over your outside shoulder, and you look to try to make a play out there. But generally speaking, if you're in phase and you're looking back for the football, I want you looking back over your inside shoulder. I want you looking over this shoulder here, not here. That's how you get yourself into trouble, because when you look here, more likely than not, you're going to end up face guarding. And so that's what you see from Jeff Gladney a ton. And my last weakness is he could have more ball production. This is a guy that had 5 interceptions, and that's a good amount, you know, throughout a career, but had 38 pass breakups. You know, 38 is a ton of pass breakups. And when you watch him, a few more of those pass breakups could have been converted into interceptions. So he does a lot of body catching, not a lot of hand catching from Jeff Gladney. So he's not one of these guys with prolific hands that if you make a mistake, he's going to make you pay for that mistake. If it doesn't hit him in his chest, if it doesn't hit him in a region where he can secure the football other than his hands, he's more of a guy that's going to knock it away more so than actually pick it off. But my player comp for him is Jourdan Lewis, the Dallas Cowboy corner taken out of Michigan a few years ago in the draft. I liked Jourdan Lewis coming out of Michigan, and I liked Jeff Gladney coming out of TCU, and all of that leads to the selection being A4 for me. Jeff Gladney's a solid pick. It's a good place where you were able to select him, and so I don't have any qualms with this pick. And the thing that I really like is that he was drafted by the Vikings. If there was a pick made by any other team, maybe this is a 3. But because this pick was made by the Vikings, and I know what I'm getting out of Mike Zimmer as a defensive backs coach, he's going to coach these guys up, and you're going to get the most out of these players. So feel good about any cornerback taken in Minnesota, any safety taken in Minnesota. I feel really good about him because of Mike Zimmer and his background with defensive backs. You get to the next pick in this draft for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's offensive tackle Ezra Cleveland out of Boise State. 2nd round, 58th overall selection. This is a guy that I had rated as my 6th overall tackle in this draft. He was the 7th tackle taken in this draft. So good value there. I had him pegged as a 2nd round pick. You got him late 2nd round. So that's even better value because I thought he would have been gone early to mid 2nd round. He was around for you. And this was remember, kind of surrounding this whole Trent Williams trade situation. They took him as a means to an end to say we're done with the Trent Williams situation. We're going to go ahead and solve one of our issues along the offensive line at tackle. Obviously, Riley Reiff probably going to play his final year in Minnesota this year. And so Ezra Cleveland is a guy that will be able to potentially step in and be ready to rock and roll as early as this year. I think he's a guy that you could plug and play day one, but it'll be even better if he gets to sit, watch, and be ready to hit the ground running next season. But 6'6", 311 pounds, 33-inch arms, and a 4.93 40, which tells you this guy's an athlete at the tackle position. 13 games started at left tackle in 2019. 40 games started for his career at left tackle. So this guy, plenty of experience, and he's a tough guy as well, as you will find out as we break him down. His strengths, his height, 6'6", again, can't teach that. Outstanding athleticism. I told you 4.93 guy. When you watch him on tape, he's an easy mover. And so to me, he fits in a zone run blocking scheme, which is what you employ in Minnesota. So this is a perfect fit for you guys. Absolutely. Climbs to the 2nd level with ease. Again, kind of piggybacks off of me talking about his athleticism and being an easy mover. You see it with his ability to climb to the 2nd level, get to that linebacker, get to that safety, and take those guys out of the play. Surprisingly generates movement in the run game. I was surprised because generally when you talk about a guy in a zone run blocking scheme, they're not looking to generate movement. They're just looking to get on a block and get in the way and be a barrier. But he's a guy that actually takes a defensive lineman or takes a backer and moves him 2-3 yards up the field. I was shocked. I did not expect that, especially when you look at his frame. It's a very lean looking frame, so you're not expecting a bunch of power to be generated from that type of frame, but he actually did. Has enough core strength to withstand the bull rush. Now, he could get a little bit stronger, you know what I mean? But I was again, pleasantly surprised watching guys bull rush him. He'd give up a yard or two, and those feet would move back a little bit. Then he would anchor down, and he wouldn't give up more ground. So I thought he had enough core strength to handle the bull rush. Toughness. He battled through turf toe all season long in 2019 and did not miss a game. If I'm not mistaken, he injured his toe in the second game of the season. And if you've never had turf toe, I haven't, but I've heard it's just a brutal injury, especially for someone that's relying on their toes. In the football players at any position, doesn't matter which one you're playing, you rely on your toe. And just imagine jamming your toe and then having to play with it all season long. Because the only way a jammed finger or jammed toe or anything like that heals is by not re-aggravating it. Well, you got to let it heal, but you don't have time when you're playing and you're practicing. And so that's pretty damn admirable for him to gut that out the entire year. Mirrors well. He's a guy that he's able to stay in front of guys as edge rushers try to give him all of these moves and try to outside, back, inside. He's able to stay in front of them and not allow them to get by him. Gets out of his stance with a fluid kick slide. So again, the athleticism is on display here. Out of his stance, kick slide opens up, able to thwart edge rushers who think they're going to beat him around the edge and shorten the corner. He's able to push them around the pocket and allow the quarterback enough time to step up and deliver the football. His experience, again, 40 tackle starts at left tackle. I mean, that's a bunch of starts, ton of experience, and his availability. Did not miss a game last year. 40 starts in 4 seasons tells you a lot about, 40 starts in 3 seasons tells you a lot about Ezra Cleveland and his ability to perform at a very high level. Weaknesses: can have trouble with bending to adjust to ducking rushers looking to turn the corner early. Length plays a factor there. So I don't like to beat guys up for their lack of length at the tackle position, but only time I bring it up is when it's apparent. And here you see it. First of all, when you're 6'6", when you get those really big tackles, 6'6", 6'7" guys, 6'8", that's when bending becomes an issue. It's hard for those guys to bend. So if you get a 6'3" edge rusher that can bend at a weird angle that can turn the corner, it's tough for those guys to combat that because they can't bend, and you start seeing them bending at the waist instead of the knees, and that's when they get themselves into trouble. He's one of those guys. And then, another problem there is, so you're not bending at your knees. You're a big, tall guy. You want to bend at the waist. Okay. Well, if you got 35-inch arms, you're going to be able to at least push that guy down to the ground or push him around the pocket. When you got 33-inch arms, you might be missing that inch or so that you need to get your hand on that guy and disrupt him enough to stop him from turning the corner. That guy may be able to clear you now and get around. And so that's when those 33-inch arms kind of come into play for Ezra Cleveland, which is part of the reason I think he's still here for you in the late stages of the second round. Trouble with washing inside spin moves and swims. When guys give him hard outside, back, inside, or a spin move, and as I talked about him getting out of his stance quickly, sometimes he's too quick to open up. And once he opens himself up to the outside, now the inside is open. He's opened that door, and guys are able to get through there, and he doesn't recover fast enough to wash him inside and allow that quarterback to just take a sidestep and reset his feet and deliver the football. Now that guy's in the lap of the quarterback, so that's something else he's going to have to be better at moving forward. He's not a nasty boy. All right, you'd prefer your offensive lineman to be a nasty boy. Nasty boy. You want a nasty boy. He's not a nasty boy. He's not looking to take a guy, pancake him, flop on top of him. He's just looking to do his job. And there's nothing wrong with that. You'd prefer a nasty boy. He's not. He's a finesse tackle. That's why he was more suited for the athleticism coupled with him not being a nasty boy. That's why he's more suited for his own run blocking scheme. He will get knocked back initially on the bull rush. I talked about that. Causing the pocket to be somewhat compromised. Look, I talked about him being able to withstand the bull rush, but there are times where he gets bulled back. And if a quarterback is a little antsy, or he's one of those guys that recognizes the rush, that he pays a little bit more attention to the rush than he needs to, he'll be spooked a bit. You know, when you see your left tackle out of the corner of your eye giving ground and he's jumping up like this and he's backing up and giving up ground, you start to panic and you may flush the pocket a little bit earlier than you need to. Now, he usually does a good job of anchoring down at some point. But again, if I'm a quarterback and I'm a little antsy and maybe I've been getting hit a couple times early in the game and I look out of the rear view of my peripheral and I see you kind of getting blown back a bit, I'm hauling ass. I'm getting out of dodge. So that's something else to keep in mind. But this is a guy here, to me, that's a quality pick, especially where you got him. I really like the value that the Minnesota Vikings got here with Ezra Cleveland. And as a result, for me, this pick is a 4. I really like this selection by the Minnesota Vikings. Really thought it was a good pickup here. And it solves a need that you're eventually going to have in Minnesota. So I thought this was a good pickup by the Vikings. And it's a 4 for me as we move on to the next selection here. And that pick is cornerback Cameron Dantzler out of Mississippi State. 3rd round, 89th overall selection, 11th cornerback taken in this draft. I had him rated as my 9th overall cornerback. So to me, that was good value. And also, I had him as a day 2 pick. I thought initially going into the combine, I thought he was going to be a 2nd round pick. Then he ran really slow, and I think that knocked him down to a 3rd round pick. So I had him more as a 3rd round pick, but, you know, 2nd or 3rd round wouldn't have made me any bit of difference. I think he's a really quality football player, despite the lack of long distance speed that he showed at the combine. And speaking of which, 4.6, 4.40 is what he ran. So not the kind of speed you're looking for from a boundary corner, but at 6'2", a $188, he does have some length and some ability to disrupt. And he also has the length to be able to recover. If he's close enough with that 6'2" frame, he should be able to get back into the play. But 2 tackles for loss, a half a sack, 1 forced fumble, 8 PBUs, 2 interceptions in 9 games for Cameron Dantzler in 2019. Overall, for his career, 6 tackles for loss, a sack and a half, 1 forced fumble, 20 pass breakups, 5 interceptions in 35 games. So I'll give you my player comp for him a little bit later on, but his strengths, despite his his slender frame, and he's ultra aggressive and physical. So when you look at him, you see this skinny kid, man. He's just looks like skin and bones, essentially. You know, when you're 6'2" and you're only a $188, you're pretty damn skinny. But when you see him, and on the field, you're like, whoa, this guy's pretty damn aggressive for somebody his size. Like, there's not a lot to him in terms of girth and you know, in terms of a muscular build, but he's aggressive and physical, man. He'll come up and make a tackle. He doesn't shy away from contact. That's the next positive here, is that he doesn't shy away from contact despite his frame. He's looking to come up and make a tackle. Extremely confident and competitive. I call it CBS. Cornerback sauce. He's got that cornerback sauce that you need. You got to be dripping with that sauce as a cornerback at the next level, because you're going to get beat. These receivers get paid too, and they're really good. They're special. And you got to be able to wipe the memory bank clean, come back, and not be afraid. You know, I'm not saying that if you're running a 4.6 and the guy in front of you is running a 4.3 that you need to come up and challenge him at the line of scrimmage. You got to be smart. Don't be a retard. But you also have to be able to understand that I'm good too. I'm in the NFL for a reason. I belong here, and he's got that cornerback sauce, man. He's got that CBS. Can play press or press man or zone coverage. He can play off. He can do all of those things. So very aware of his surroundings. Speaking of which, recognizes routes and combos to put himself in positions to make plays. So another one of these guys, really smart. And again, it makes sense. This is what Mike Zimmer wants out of his corners. Guys that are physical, that aren't afraid to tackle, and also guys that are high IQ football players that understand route combinations and able to see what's happening in front of them and make plays. He's another one of those players. He tackles. I've talked about that already. Not afraid to throw his body around. Fights aggressively at the point of contact. That's the thing I probably like about him the most, is that at the point of contact, he's extremely aggressive, swiping at arms, swiping at ball, going after the football aggressively. And he can catch. He does have hands. You'll see him make some interceptions with his hands. So he's a guy that will make some plays. And then ball skill production. Again, 5 interceptions in his career, had 2 alone last season. So this is a guy that will make plays on the football. Weaknesses, his speed. I talked about that already. A 4.64. You cannot ignore that. Maybe he plays faster on game day. Maybe he had a rough day at the combine and was going to clean it up at his pro day. Whatever the case may be, a 4.64 is what it is. It is not appealing if you're a team looking for a boundary corner to man it up for you on the outside. Now, in zone, with his length and his size, you're fine. All right, Dick Sherman wasn't running a 4.4 anything. All right, but again, you got to be able to have the ability to get in the play, stay on top of the receiver, and make plays on the football. I think he has the ability to do that. Also, let me just say this. Although we talk about lack of speed, when you watch the tape, you never see anybody really get behind him. You don't see anybody 2-3 yards behind Cameron Dantzler and getting smoked on a play. He may get beat, but it's not because he's not there. It's not because he got beat just off of lack of speed. Generally, he's in phase, he's in the picture, he's right there. And for whatever reason, whether he doesn't look around at a timely enough fashion or whatever the case may be, he's usually right there, But the next weakness is his lanky build. He's a smaller guy. Again, he's got the height you're looking for, but if there's a big physical receiver that's 225 pounds, he's going to body up Cameron Dantzler. I mean, he's 188, man. He's a smaller guy, so you can't ignore that either. He can be a little grabby and a face guarder down the field, will be flagged for PI at the next level. I firmly believe that. Similar to Jeff Gladney, another one of these guys. And again, I don't like to criticize corners for the way they look over their shoulder because they may be taught that. You don't know what these guys are being taught by their college coaches, but he's another one of these guys that looks over his inside shoulder way too often for me. And again, to me, when you look over your inside shoulder, your outside shoulder, to me, that leads to this, I think, not innate. It leads to this ability to just grab it. I think it fosters the thought in your brain to just grab a guy because you're not facing the right way. That's just how I view it. Like when you're turned the wrong way, your initial reaction is just to grab, and he does that, and I could see him being, he's going to get PIs. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be flagged a ton. I know you were frustrated with Xavier Rhodes and all the penalties he got. You're going to be frustrated with Cameron Dantzler because I think he's going to get flagged for some PIs as well. Too frequently looks over the wrong shoulder to track the football, and I kind of just mentioned that. He's a guy that, to me, that's what kind of leads to him grabbing, is because he's not in the proper position to make a play on the football, and he panics and he grabs. But we'll see if they can clean that up, correct that, and kind of make him a little bit more confident in where he locates the football. But in any event, I like Cameron Dantzler a lot, and he is a guy that is being drafted by the right team again. A little bit more confidence goes into the pick for me because of where he's drafted, because he's going to be coached by Mike Zimmer. And because of that, this probably would have been a 3 for me for another team, but because it's Mike Zimmer, it's another 4 for me in this pick here of Cameron Dantzler in the 3rd round. Good value where you got him, and a really quality football player. I think this is going to be a good pick for the Minnesota Vikings as we move on to the next selection in this draft. And it's the 4th round, 117th pick overall. Edge rusher out of South Carolina, DJ Wanham is the selection. 6'5", 258 pounds, 34-inch arms, which to me is his best attribute at this point. He ran a 4.73, not the most explosive guy. We'll talk about that. But 9.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and an interception, and a blocked kick in 2019 in 12 games. For his career, 28 tackles for loss, 14 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 5 pass breakups, 1 interception, and 2 block kicks in 43 games. So this is a guy that kind of filled up the stat sheet a bit. I had a 5th round grade on him, so getting him in the 4th was a little early for me. And I had him closer to being a 6th round selection than a 5th. So even if you're drafting him in the 5th, where are you drafting him in the 5th? If you're drafting him early in the 5th, I'm a little sketchy on that. If you're drafting him mid to the late stages of the 5th, okay, I'm fine with that. You got him in the 4th, and so I thought it was a little early for him, and I'll explain why. But length, that's to me his greatest attribute. When you watch him, he's got to use his length more, because when he does use his length, he's really effective. And that's the thing that's going to allow him to win at the next level. He doesn't have a lot of tools in his box. So in order for him to win at the next level, he's going to have to learn how to utilize his length, which is abnormal at 34 inches. He's got to use that better. Ability to use length to shorten the corner and around the edge. To me, when he wins as a rusher, it's when he uses his length. He uses that length to get around the corner, to beat the tackle and shorten the edge. And what I mean by that is he'll use his length to initiate contact. Tackles want to get their hands on the defender first. They'd like to just extend a punch to knock you off balance and keep you at bay. If you're able to establish contact first, and you can do that with 34-inch arms, you then control the action. You can then latch and snatch. You can then use that to slap down hands and immediately win around the corner. And that's what he does. And when he does that, he's his most effective. High energy, high motor defender. You never see this guy taking a play off. He's always around the football, and he's always hustling. He's a high IQ defender. At South Carolina, he was their buck defender, and essentially it's your Leo. It's your guy that kind of stands up, moves around. You don't know where he's going to be lined up, but he's mostly an edge rusher, a guy that probably is more comfortable and better suited for a 3-4 defense as a stand-up backer on the outside, but could stick his hand in the dirt, could be standing up in a 2-point stance. On one play, he's on the left side. On the next play, he's on the right side. Next play, he's mugging the A-gap, and then he's dropping as a zone defender, or he's coming on that blitz in the A-gap. He's all over the place. That's what a buck defender was in that defense at South Carolina, and he played it well. Versatility. Can stand up. I just talked about that. Hand in the dirt. Can do that. And can mug the A-gap, can drop from the A-gap and drop over the middle of the field, key quarterback's eyes, that sort of thing. So there's some versatility with DJ Wanham. He's disciplined, a guy that will stay at home, backside of a play, won't bite the bait, won't overcommit on a boot, will stay outside, stay home. If that quarterback rolls back outside of his side, he'll be there to greet him. So he's very disciplined in that manner. And he was a team captain for 3 years at South Carolina, made a permanent captain after his freshman season going into his sophomore year. So, again, a guy with really high character coming into this locker room. His weaknesses, he's athletically limited. He's got some limitations that I think are going to really hinder him at the next level. Despite his length, he struggles to disengage at the point of attack. It's one thing to have length and be able to engage and hold up at the point of attack. But again, when you're in the run game, there's two phases in the run game to being a stout run defender and a guy that goes above and beyond the Call of Duty. One is to be stout at the point of attack, to do your job, which is eat up this blocker, keep a shoulder free if possible to be able to make a play, whether inside or outside. Turn that run, spill it back inside if you're the last line of defense on the outside. Set a physical hard edge and flush that run back inside. That's the first job, is to just be stout at the point of attack. The second job is to disengage, to stack and shed, to get rid of that blocker and get involved in the play. He didn't do the second part. He just does his job, which is fine, but I don't want you just being a guy on the field. I want you to actually be an active participating member of the run defense. He's not always one of those guys. As a rusher, he's bland in his approach and lacks sheer explosion or bend to scare tackles. To me, I'm not afraid of him as a pass rusher at this point of his career. Maybe he gets better. Maybe he learns how to use his length. Maybe he learns how to use his hands better. But in terms of explosiveness, he's not an explosive guy. He doesn't bend well around the corner. So none of those things are going to scare tackles at this level. He's going to have to learn how to be really technically sound if he wants to make an impact as an edge rusher at the next level, and has to learn how to manipulate his length better. I talked about that already. He's got to use his length. That's the way he's going to win at the next level. If he's not going to use his length, he's going to be useless as a pass rusher at the next level. And he missed 8 games in 2018 due to an ankle injury. So that's on the Carfax. Not a big deal. But this is the first pick for the Vikings that I didn't necessarily love here. I wasn't really on board with the pick where it was made, and I don't love him as a player necessarily. And so to me, DJ Wonnum is a 2. I'm not in love with this pick where it was made and actually the value you're getting here in DJ Wonnum. We move on to the next player in this draft, though, for the Minnesota Vikings. And it is another defensive player here. And it's defensive lineman James Lynch out of Baylor, 4th round, 130th pick overall. And this is an interesting pick because I actually don't know. You guys may be able to tell me down in the comment section as Vikings fans where they intend on playing James Lynch. And maybe they have multiple roles for him. They maybe think I think he's a 3 technique at the next level. I thought that he might have been better suited as a 5 technique, as a 3-4 defensive end. But you drafted him. You play a base 4-3 defense. So I'm thinking he's a 3 tech, which is fine. I think he can win inside. But we'll see what the Vikings have in mind for him. Maybe they think he can play outside as a defensive end, and they're going to give him every opportunity to prove he can't. We'll see. Maybe they view him as a guy with versatility that can play outside, can kick inside, and be reduced on obvious passing situations to get more guys on the field that can rush and kick him inside and reduce him to a 3 tech. Maybe that's how they view him. I don't know. We'll see. But 6'4", 289 pounds, 32-inch arms. This guy with a bunch of production at Baylor. 19.5 tackles for loss, 13.5 of which were sacks. 3 forced fumbles, 5 pass breakups, 2 blocked kicks in 2019. Guy was exceptional. Was the Big 12 Player of the Year and an AP All-American, first team All-American this past year. So this guy put up some numbers. 33.5 tackles for loss, 22 of them sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 5 pass breakups, and 3 block kicks in his career. So another one of these guys that did a little bit of everything throughout his career. I had a 4th round grade on him. You got him in the 4th round, so I absolutely love the value here. He was my 10th rated defensive lineman in this draft. And I'll tell you who my player comp for him is a little bit later on. And just to go back, I think I might have left out the last 2 guys. Cameron Dantzler, for me, reminds me of Al Harris, the ex-Philadelphia Eagle, Green Bay Packer corner. He was one of my favorite corners when he played. Really aggressive, smaller guy, but tall, lanky, always around the football. You make a mistake around Al Harris, he was going to make you pay for that mistake. I see the same kind of qualities in Cameron Dantzler. And DJ Wonnum, for me, he reminds me of Shalik Calhoun, a guy that was drafted by the Raiders out of Michigan State. Hasn't really amounted to much in his career, and I kind of see the same thing from DJ Wonnum. Hopefully he proves me wrong. We'll see what happens. But let's get to James Lynch. Strength, big, thick, physical frame. And he's country strong. One of these guys that you hear people say, he's just country strong, 6'4", 289, big, thick, physical frame, and he knows how to use it. His strength is another thing. You'll see this guy bull rush people, ragtag them around and ragdoll them, and he's just a guy with, again, country strong, okay? Heavy, violent, active hands. I love that about James Lynch, man. Just his hands are just so violent. They're so heavy. You can tell that guys feel when he lays hands on them. And it allows him to do work. When he slaps a guy's hand down, they feel it. And they go flying down, and now he's around them. All right? When he puts his paws on guys and gets that bull rush going, guys are affected at times. And so he's got heavy, violent, active hands. Nice secondary spin move. So when he tries to win with speed initially and that doesn't work, or he tries hand fighting and that doesn't work and he's going up the field with it, and then he spins back inside, it's a great secondary spin move that he produces that usually gets him to the quarterback. So that's a nice attribute to have, is to have a secondary spin move. He has that. Powerful bull rush. I talked about him having active, heavy, violent hands. That kind of complements his bull rush, which is and I talked about his strength as well. So all of those things kind of sync up with one another, which all equates to a really powerful bull rush. He's scheme diverse. And I talked about him being a guy for me that I thought would probably be a better fit as potentially a 5-tech in a 3-4 defense as a defensive end. But he could also play in a 4-3 defense, which you play. So, again, you see the scheme versatility. I think he could maybe be a defensive end for you. I wouldn't necessarily do that. I'd kick him inside, make him a 3-tech. But who's to say that the Vikings don't have plans for him to be outside? I think you can kick him inside, but he's got scheme versatility nonetheless. Productivity. I talked about all of his stats, I should say, and how decorated of a football player he was in 2019. First team All-American, Big 12 Player of the Year. The productivity was there, absolutely. 13.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 5 pass breakups, 2 block kicks. Guy impacted the game in so many different ways. Special teams value. Talked about him blocking kicks, 2 of them last year, 3 for his career. So that's also something to take into consideration. Started the point of attack as a defender in the run game. And also flashes some quickness. You know, that's really not his forte, but you'll see it from time to time. He times up and syncs up the snap, and he gets off the ball quick. And before that tackle or that guard gets set, he's by them in the backfield making a play. So you'll see that from him from time to time. Weaknesses. Does his outstanding 2019 sack total translate to the NFL? And when I think of him, I think of other guys that have had ridiculous seasons their final year in college, like Trent Murphy, for instance. Like Trent Murphy had like a 22 sack season his final year at Stanford. I'm like, what? And I think he led the nation in sacks that year. And I mean, Trent Murphy's been solid, but he's not that dominant. You know what I mean? So is his sack total from 29 just a byproduct of him playing in a conference where maybe the offensive linemen weren't all that great? Or is this something that translates and he's going to be a problem at the next level as a pass rusher? Also, keep this in mind. When you watch the tape, there's a lot of free runs to the quarterback where it may be a 3-step drop. Ball needs to come out quick. It doesn't for whatever reason. No one blocks him because he wasn't supposed to be blocked in that play because the ball was supposed to get out fast enough where he wouldn't be a impact player on that particular play. And he gets to the quarterback, free run. You see that 3 or 4 times watching him on tape. So some of those sacks, he didn't have to work hard for him at all. So just keep that in mind as well. He needs to develop more of a rush plan. I think he's one of those guys that if his first move doesn't work a lot of times, and that secondary spin move isn't going to hit home, and even though he has that secondary spin move, it's not something that he can go to all the time. He doesn't have much of a rush plan. You know, if that bull rush doesn't work, he's stuck. If he doesn't win with quickness right off the snap, more likely than that, he's stuck. You know, he's got to come up with a plan. All right, I'm going to go, I'm going to go hard up the field these next 3 snaps, and then I'm going to spin, and see if I can't beat him inside. Or I'm going to go hard inside a bunch of times, and then I'm coming with just straight power. He's looking for me to try to beat him with speed. I'm going to come with straight power this time. You got to start coming up with a plan. Being an edge rusher or just a pass rusher in general, no matter where you are, half of the game is mental. You got to have that mental warfare with the guy across from you. Got to be able to set him up and make things happen. And then the next weakness is, what is he exactly? Is he a 5 technique in an odd front, or is he a 3 tech in an even front? I'm guessing he's going to be a 3 technique in an even front as he was drafted by the Vikings. And he's not a tremendous athlete. He's not. And that's okay. He's 290 pounds. I don't really care about that. His job is to impact and affect the game from the interior defensive tackle position, and I think he can do that. So we'll see. But I really like James Lynch. My comp for him is Zach Allen, a guy that was drafted similar size, almost to the T. Last year drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, I believe in the 3rd round out of BC, a guy that I really liked. I like James Lynch as well. And so I think this is a quality pick here by the Minnesota Vikings. Like the pick. I think it's a 3 overall. Got him in a good spot. I want to see how he fares inside because that's where you're probably more likely than not going to play him. And I'm intrigued by the pick, and we'll see what happens there. We move on to the next selection, the 7th in this draft for the Minnesota Vikings. 4th round, 132nd pick overall, linebacker out of Oregon. Troy Dye is the selection. Here's a guy, was my 9th rated linebacker in this draft. I had a 4th round grade on him. So again, that kind of syncs up where you took him. 6'3", 231 pounds. So long frame, not a lot of girth on that frame. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But 9.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 of them sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions in 13 games. So he fills up the stat sheet. Career stats, 44 tackles for loss, 15 of them sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 16 pass breakups, 5 interceptions, and 1 block kick in 50 games. He was Mr. Do-It-All for Oregon throughout his 4 years in Eugene. Strengths, long frame and tackle radius. 6'3" guy with long arms gives you a long frame and a long tackle radius. So that's something you got to like about Troy Dye. Loose moving, active defender. This guy, you can just tell he's just fluid, man. Really comfortable out in space. Some linebackers really not comfortable getting into drops, really not comfortable turning and flipping their hips and running with a defender up the seam. These aren't things you worry about with Troy Dye, man. Easy mover, can go sideline to sideline, very active defender, outstanding tackler. Generally, he does a good job of getting guys on the ground. It isn't always forcefully done, but again, I really don't care about that. Just get it done, and he usually does that. He's an aggressive blitzer. I love watching this guy blitz because he'll dive over a blocker. You cut him, he'll get right back up and chase after the quarterback. He's just coming in full steam ahead. Yeah, he's without any care or regard for his own body or the guy that's trying to block him. He's just coming in a million miles per second. You know, some guys, they don't want to get in front of those type of freight trains. They'll just try to cut you, and he'll dive over a guy. And so love him as an aggressive blitzer. High football IQ. Oregon used him everywhere. Why? Because he was smart enough to handle it. Move him around, mug the A-gap, drop him back in zone coverage, have him playing outside as an underneath zone defender, have him running up the seam with a tight end. He did it all. He split him out wide, and all of a sudden, he's going 30 yards down the field with a tight end. They had him do some of everything at Oregon. Ball skills. Had at least one interception in every season that he played at Oregon. So, again, 5 interceptions at the linebacker position. Absolutely great ball production. He's got some ball skills. Can offer you value in coverage in zone or man. He's a little bit better in zone than he is in man, but he can do some things. Comes downhill with and slithers through gaps. And so he's one of those guys that just finds a way to the football, finds a way to get through that gap, get skinny, slither through that hole, get in the backfield, and next thing you know, it's a 3-yard tackle for loss. Finds a way to beat that guard who's pulling out there, trying to create space, beat him to the punch, get to that running back, get him down on the ground. He just finds a way to get through gaps, get downhill quickly, and he's unafraid of contact. Look, he's not a big guy, all right, but he's not afraid of contact. I talked about him as a blitzer, being unafraid, and it kind of doubles. He'll throw his body around. 330-pound guard coming his way. He sees it. It's not going to be pretty. He knows it's probably not going to end well for him. He doesn't care. He's going to come down. He's going to smash that guy and may not make the play, but he may blow it up too. So weaknesses, very thin frame, man, at 6'3", 231. And I don't know if he can add much more to it or not. We'll see. Struggles with blocks and running through tackle attempts. So this is a thing. When he gets guys down, it's usually shoestring ankle tackle types. But again, I don't care. But when he sizes a guy up and they go mano a mano, if that guy's got any leg drive or any strength upper body wise, he can drag and take Troy Dye for a ride, or he can run through an arm tackle attempt up top because he's not physically built to just run through a guy. So that's something that kind of thin frame kind of speaks to. And then he struggles getting off of blocks. He's got to win with his quickness. He's got to diagnose it quickly and get there first. If he gets lodged onto a block with I don't even care if it's a tight end. Generally, if he gets blocked, he's not getting off of that block. Has to win with speed and quickness or hands at the point of attack. And that kind of piggybacks off of what I was just talking about. He's got to win early. He can't win after he's already been contacted. He just usually doesn't. That's not his thing. So if he's able to see it, diagnose it, and get there first, he's going to win. If he's able to slither through a hole, he's going to win. But if that lineman, if that tight end, if that fullback contacts him, you got him. You got Troy Dye right where you want him. And he doesn't seem comfortable as an outside linebacker. He's an inside backer. That's where he played at Oregon. When they moved him outside, he didn't seem as comfortable. His drops didn't seem as fluid. He seemed unsure of what he was supposed to do. He's comfortable inside. Will he be allowed to play inside at the next level? I don't know. We'll see. And he can be over-aggressive. Boots, play action, those sort of things. He'll bite up on those things and take a couple false steps. And if you're looking to open up high-low concepts on him, he'll fall for the cheese in the trap. He'll bite the bait. If you send a little shallow cross or a running back comes out of the backfield late and just runs a little hook route over the middle of the field, and it's 3rd and 9, and what you're really looking to do is get that linebacker out of the middle of the field and then sneak a route behind him, a dig route behind him, he'll bite the bait. You're inviting him to take the check down in front of you and then rally up, make the tackle. They got to punt the football as a linebacker. What you don't want to do is come react to that guy in front of you open up a gap in a space where that quarterback can fit that dig route behind you and pick up the first down, he'll bite the bait at times. So that's something else to consider with him. My comp for him is Zack Cunningham. If you remember Zack Cunningham out of, I want to say it was Missouri, a few years ago, drafted by the Houston Texans. Just a long, active defender, man. He was everywhere. He was long. And I wasn't quite sure how he was going to adjust at the next level. He adjusted and acclimated himself really well. You're hoping the same thing for Troy Dye with the Minnesota Vikings. I think it's a really quality pick. And I'm impressed with some of the things he was able to do. I don't know if it translates or not. We're going to find out. But all in all, thought it was a solid pick. It's a 3 for me. Where you got him, good value, a position of need, and a player that kind of fits what the Minnesota Vikings do defensively. So I think all of those things equal up to a 3 for Troy Dye. As we move on to the next selection in this draft, 5th round, 169th pick overall, cornerback out of Temple, Harrison Hand is the pick. 5'11", 197, 32-inch arms, 4'5", 240. But he's a guy that is explosive, 41-inch vert, and a 11-foot broad. So it's a guy with some ability to do some things explosively and athletically. His season stats: 4 tackles for loss, no sacks, 5 pass breakups, 3 INTs, and a forced fumble in 12 games. So the 3 INTs stand out. Career stats: 5.5 tackles for loss, no sacks, 16 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, and a forced fumble in 34 games. So I had him as a mid to late day 3 pick. So, anywhere from rounds 5 to 6. And so getting him in the 5th round, fine by me. That's solid value. Talk about his player comp a little bit later on. But this is a guy that transferred from Baylor to Temple. And so keep that in mind as well. Strengths: adequate size and build. 5'11", $197. So right on the cusp of 200 pounds. Just shy of 6 feet tall. So really solid size. Not going to blow you away. But it's a far cry from, and it's amazing that 1 inch makes a difference. I talked about Jeff Gladney being a little bit smaller at 5'10". 5'11" is closer to 6 feet. But it's still, it's solid. It's solid. You can get away with 5'11". 5'10" is a little short. And 197, well, almost 200 pounds. So you like that kind of size there. And I think he can actually fill out his frame a little bit more in terms of, gaining maybe a few more pounds. So good physicality on the perimeter. Well, that's one of the things you notice. And you see the trend here with the corners selected by the Minnesota Vikings. They like them physical, they like them aggressive, and they like them with ball skills. Every single one of the guys that they've taken to this point fit that criteria. And so you see the trend here and what Zim Zimma is looking for. Willing tackler. Again, I sound like a broken record with these corners that have been taken by the Vikings in this draft. Throws body around, but doesn't wrap up. And so that's, I don't like the fact that he doesn't wrap up, but he will throw his body around. And I'd like to see him see what he hits, wrap up, so you're getting a guy down on the ground, but he aggressively throws his frame around. Solid route recognition of route concepts from zone coverage. Again, another one of these guys that is able to understand what the team is trying to do to him, what the opposition is trying to do, how they're trying to high-low him or whatever the case may be. And a couple of his picks that I watched, I think it was the Memphis game in particular where he had, 2 interceptions. And they're trying to high-low him, and he just wasn't going for it. And they tried to get him to bite up on a shallow route to the outside, a quick out. And he just wasn't going for it. And he sags underneath a corner route behind him and picks it off. And so you'll see that, that route combination, that route recognition. And I talked about that with the other 2 corners selected in Gladney and Dantzler. And you see it here with Harrison Hand. So, again, that's another one of those prerequisites that you have to have if you're going to play for Mike Zimmer. Competes at the point of catch really well. I love him at the POC. Really is one of those guys that's scrappy. A lot of his pass breakups are at the point of catch, where it looks like this guy's going to make the catch, and then he's raking, and he's scraping, and he's clawing, and he's scratching, and the ball comes out. And it's all him. It's all him just being aggressive and not giving up on the play. I love that that's probably the thing I love about Harrison Hand the most. I outstanding leaping ability to affect the play, and that's another thing he does. That 41-inch vert, you actually see it on tape. He can go up, and he will fight for the football at the peak of catch, at the point of catch. He will go and fight for that football at its highest peak. Weaknesses. Slow plant and drive. I talked about Jeff Gladney and his ability to plant and drive and go make a play. That is not Harrison Hand whatsoever. Whatever you want, you can have underneath on Harrison Hand. Like, if you want the comeback, if you want the slant, if you want the quick 5-yard out, you want the quick completion, it's all yours. You can't do much to stop that, because if he's in his back pedal, it takes him too long to transition from plant to drive. And so I just don't think that's something he excels at. Struggles with any kind of transition. And what I mean by that is, once he's in his back pedal, if he's got to turn and run and open up to sprint, it's slow. If he's got to transition into a break to stop, plant, and drive, it's slow. If he's got to flip his hips to turn and run out to try to get to an out route, it's slow. If he's got to turn to go inside, it's slow. Anywhere where he's making a transition, he loses a step or two, and he doesn't have that to give up in the first place. And so that's a big time problem for me with Harrison Hand. Doesn't have acceleration, the speed, or the makeup speed to stay in phase deep. Man, was he getting roasted and toasted deep. I mean, I watched him in the SMU game. Oh, my God. He got destroyed in that game. They were going after him left and right. He just could not keep up. That's just not his thing. If you're going to put him, you cannot leave him on an island, especially if he's in man-to-man. You've got to give him help over the top, or he will get beat. He just cannot stay with guys. It's not his thing. Tendency to bear hug when the cushion is threatened in off coverage and he's flat-footed. So this guy will be playing 7 to 10 yards off, and he'll get into a little bit of a back pedal. Or he might be playing 10 yards off, and he's playing the sticks, and so he's not expecting anything to go by him. And if a guy threatens his cushion, he won't turn and run. He won't open up. He'll just grab him. Just to hell with it. Just bear hug him. And you're asking for a flag. And if it's 3rd and 15, don't do that. Don't give up a free cheapie on a holding penalty or an illegal contact down the field. Don't do that. And he's one of those guys I could easily see picking up some of those penalties down the field. But there's a lot to like here. Just this is the thing with Harrison Hand. You're going to have to understand what you can and can't do with him. If you put him in compromising situations, you're going to pay for that. If you help this guy out, you put him in positions to succeed. He's more of a zone corner than he is a man-to-man guy. If you put him in zone, I think he'll be able to play effectively for you. If you ask him to play a ton of man-to-man, you're asking for trouble. To me, he's E.J. Gaines. That's my comp for him, the cornerback out of Missouri that was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams. I think they were St. Louis Rams at that point, and he played in Buffalo as well. E.J. Gaines, really solid defender in this league, and I think Harrison Hand can be much of the same. And because of that, I've got Harrison Hand as a I've got Harrison Hand as a 3. So that's how I see him, and we'll see if he's able to. We'll see if he's able to live up to that or not at the next level. He's a 5th round pick, so low risk, high reward potential here as you get to the late stages of the draft, mid to late. You're not as much counting on these guys to come in and produce, but I think he's a guy that's going to ultimately make this football team when it's all said and done. So we move on to the next player in this draft for the Vikings, and it's going to be oh my goodness. Where are we at? I'm all over the place. Give me 1 second. Yeah, here we go. All right. Let's get back to business. So you look at the next player drafted by the Vikings in this draft, and it is Fifth round, 176 pick overall, wide receiver out of Miami. KJ Osbourne is the pick. 5'11", 203 pounds, out of Miami, ran a 4.48 at the combine. 50 catches, 545 yards, 5 touchdowns. Also, a guy that can help you on punt returns and kickoffs. 16 punt returns for 255 yards, no touchdowns. 10 kick returns for 201 yards, no touchdowns. There. Career stats, 146 receptions for 2,035 yards and 17 touchdowns. 49 punts in his career for 594 yards, no touchdowns. And 33 kick returns for 646 yards and no touchdowns. I had him as a mid to late day 3 pick, so 5th, 6th round, anywhere in there you were fine. 5th round pick here, I'm okay with that. Reliable hands, catches the football in traffic. That's one of the next strengths, so I'll just combine those two together. He's one of those guys you can go to, and he's got to catch it in traffic because he doesn't separate all that well. Exhibits fearlessness and toughness. He's willing to do all the dirty work. He'll run the slant right into the linebacker. He'll run the dig route right into the middle of the field to the safety. He's not afraid. He's fearless. He'll do all the dirty work. He'll block in the run game. I like KJ Osbourne in that regard in terms of toughness. Able to handle multiple wide receiver positions at Buffalo, and he's a transfer from Buffalo. He ended up transferring after the quarterback last year, Tyree Jackson, decided to leave school early, along with the wide receiver, Johnson, that ended up leaving as well. Both of those guys left. He figured, I don't need to stick around. So he ended up transferring. He was a graduate transfer, already had graduated from Buffalo, and so he decided to finish up his career at Miami. And he can handle multiple positions. He played the slot, primarily the slot at Buffalo. And then when he went to Miami, they used him outside a little bit more. So he can handle multiple positions at wide receiver. Versatility, offers some special teams value there. I talked about him being a punt and a kick returner. Now, he did not have any touchdowns, so take it for what it's worth. But that doesn't mean he can't be a dynamo at the next level. But he did not make any big plays necessarily at the collegiate level. He will work for food, meaning he'll block in the run game. And I talked about that already. That kind of goes along with the toughness that I mentioned. And a hard worker and leadership qualities. So he was already one of the leaders on that Miami Hurricanes team in 2019, and he had just gotten there. So he works hard from all reports. He's got leadership qualities, so that's something else that you just throw into the strength column. Weaknesses. Lacks explosiveness and twitchiness. Like, he's not one of these guys that's going to be dynamic, that's going to just run by guys, that's going to separate, going to catch it and just run away from the field. That's not him. As a matter of fact, he just, the next thing is he's a monotone runner. You know, he plays, he runs, and all of his gears are just one speed. You know, runs his routes at one speed. There isn't deception from him where he's like kind of slow playing and he just speeds it up. And it's just all the same with him, you know. So he's a monotone runner. Doesn't have a fifth gear, you know. Doesn't even have a fourth gear. He's kind of stuck in third gear, and that's okay. That's who he is. Limited agility. Doesn't accelerate out of cuts and takes a while to rev it back up after changing direction. So he's one of those guys that when you watch him, you know, run a dig route or so, and if he wants to give you a little bit of this, man, is he slow to come down the hill and come down the line and come get that football. Or if he makes a cut, he catches the football on the comeback. Now he's turning to try to get up the field, and he goes this way, and then he's stopping to go back outside. Man, does it take him a long time to get from downshifting to gear 1 back up to gear 3 at top speed. Whew, takes him a while. So, and I think that kind of speaks to probably why aren't more big plays in terms of touchdowns on punts and kickoffs, because he can't string cuts together, and he definitely loses speed when changing directions. Uninspiring release off the line of scrimmage. Again, doesn't really threaten me, doesn't scare me as a defensive back when I watch him in really any shape, form, or fashion. So he's solid. He does what you ask him to do. And, you know, there's some value in that. He's a 3 for me. I liken him to Andre Roberts. Longtime Arizona Cardinal, Washington Redskin, Buffalo Bill, New York Jet. He's been all over the place. His claim to fame is he's one hell of a return man. Punts, kickoffs. Andre Roberts is still in the league right now because of his ability on special teams. And that may be what KJ Osbourne has to do. He may have to transform himself into a niche player to hang around, because just looking at his skill set, I don't know if it's enough to carry the day to keep him in the league as just a wide receiver. Maybe it is. Maybe he will find value in just being a tough guy wide receiver that does the dirty work. And maybe he's shown the ability to play on special teams as a gunner. So maybe that will be his saving grace. But as of right now, he's going to have to show some things as a return man, I think, to be able to stick around in this league. So we move on to the next draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's in the 6th round, 203rd pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Oregon State, Blake Brandel is the pick. 6'7", 307-pound offensive lineman with 33-inch arms. 12 games, 12 starts at left tackle in 2019. And for his career, 48 games, 48 starts, 39 of which were at left tackle, the other 9 at right tackle. So he was primarily a tackle, more so a left tackle than a right tackle, but has the flexibility to play both. He may ultimately be kicked inside because of his lack of length. I talked about one of your earlier draft picks having 33-inch arms, but at least he's got athleticism to kind of combat that. You're not getting that here in Blake Brandel. So strength, big frame, which could stand to be a little bit stouter. At 6'7", you like that. You like the size. You feel like, hey, at 6'7", he should be able to put on more weight. Maybe he can. Maybe he can't. But we'll see. I think he can stand to be a little bit stouter. He's technically sound, man. He's really clean in that regard. Feet, hands, angles. They all align. They all sync up. His feet and hands are in unison. They work as one. He takes really good angles to get to blocks. He just understands how to do his job to the best of his abilities. Dominates versus lesser competition. I watched him versus Oklahoma State in 2019. He killed him. I was impressed. Let me just say that. Watched him versus Ohio State in 2018. Not so much. He was absolutely destroyed by Nick Bosa. So, they take it for what it is. Durability. Started 48 straight games over a 4-year stretch. There's something to be said about that. Fights to stay on blocks and competes in the run game. I do like that about him. Does his job in the pass game. Only allowed 1 sack in 2019 and wasn't flagged very often either. So he's a guy that, like I said, when you're technically sound, you're going to be able to stay in front of guys. If they're not elite, you're going to stay in front of them, and you're not going to pick up many flags doing it. So his weaknesses, he's not a plus athlete. Average to below average movement skills. You saw that he was exposed versus Ohio State in 2018. And so you see that. He's just not a guy that can move his feet all that well, which is why he's probably going to have to kick inside the guard. Shorter arms that will probably force him inside. I talked about that already. Lacks foot quickness as a tackle and needs to get stronger to stand up to the bull rush better. Now, one of the things that was a pet peeve of mine watching him is that he does give ground on the bull rush and at times will be absolutely driven right into the lap of the quarterback in terms of being bull rush. So and that's why I talked about his frame is big as a strength, but he's going to need to get a little stouter. He's going to need to put on a little bit more muscle mass, get a little bit stronger to be able to withstand some of these bull rushes on the inside. Plays high with limited bend at 6'7". It's not uncommon for a 6'7" defender to be playing high, and that's what Blake Brandel does. And when you're playing high, you lose leverage, and when you play with limited bend, you're not having much leverage. You're allowing guys to get up under your pads and drive you back, and that's been one of his problems to date. It's a solid pick, though. I don't hate the pick. I don't love the pick, but I don't have any issues. It's a 6th-round pick, low risk, high reward. If this guy turns out to be a solid guard for you, good for you. But for me, it's a 2 right now. Looking at him, I just don't see the tremendous upside here with Blake Brandel, and so we move on to the next pick in the draft for the Minnesota Vikings, 6th round, 205th pick overall. Safety out of Michigan. Josh Metellus is the pick. 5'11", 209 pounds, ran a 4.55 at the combine. I really like Josh Metellus. I'm just going to tell you right now. I wanted my Washington Redskins to select him in the 5th round, and you got him in the 6th round. I had a 4th or 5th round grade on him. So to get him in the 6th round speaks volumes. 4 tackles for loss, no sacks, no forced fumbles, 5 pass breakups, 2 interceptions in 13 games. In his career, 9 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 16 pass breakups, 5 interceptions, 1 block kick, and a pick 6 in 46 games. So, had him as my 11th rated safety on my board, and I think this is good value here, getting him in the 6th round. Strengths: aggressive, fearless demeanor. He'll come up, he'll hit you. I was watching him versus Alabama, and most guys want no parts of Najee Harris. He's a big dude. He's physical. He drops his shoulder pads. And Josh Metellus wasn't afraid. Now, that doesn't mean you, again, I've always told you guys this. Just because you're afraid doesn't mean you can't get your ass whooped. That's not a prerequisite to getting your ass whooped. You don't have to be afraid to get your ass whooped. And Josh Metellus wasn't afraid. In one play, he stood Najee Harris up. I was like, whoa, didn't know you could do that. You're more of a cover guy. Whoa, I didn't know that was in your DNA. And then there was another play where Najee Harris took his ass for a ride for about 5-6 yards. And so that can happen too. But he's not afraid. He's not afraid. Efficient tackler. He's one of these guys that gets you on the ground. And so I like that about Josh Metellus. Again, not always pretty, as I just mentioned, but he gets you on the ground, gets the job done. Takes quality pursuit angles. As a safety, I need you, because you're the last line of defense. That's why they call you a safety. I need you to take proper angles. You can't take poor angles. And if you're not running a 4-3 or a 4-4, you definitely can't take bad angles. So I like the fact that he takes quality pursuit angles. He's a patient defender. Some guys overreact, bite down on play action fake, come up too soon. Some guys overreact to where a running back is going, and they shoot a gap, and then the running back cuts it back, and now all of a sudden he's off to the races. He sees how things develop, and then he reacts. Patient defender. Has great gap fits in the run game. I love the way he comes down, identifies where the best gap fit for him is, and then hits it. Some guys, I've talked about that with other players. I'll talk about that with another guy in your draft, where they're not quite sure where they fit in these gaps. Coming downhill, they're just like, I'm just going downhill fast, and I'm just going to shoot a gap, and hopefully it's the right one. You can really hurt your team if you don't pick the right gap coming down as a safety. He gets in the run game in his proper gap fits. That's something else I like about Josh Metellus. High football IQ. He's a smart football player. Reads angles. Reads what the receiver is doing, where the ball is going to potentially go, that sort of thing. As I just talked about, proper gap fits. Physical at the point of catch. This is a guy that will take proper angles to the football, and when he gets there, he's looking to be physical, dismember or separate man from ball, dislodge the football in any way, shape, or form, and usually he's just physical. Whether he's hitting you and lowering a shoulder or he's swiping down at the arms, he's usually physical at the point of catch. Above average in underneath coverage. I like him as an underneath coverage defender. I think he does some good things, down closer to the line of scrimmage from a coverage standpoint. And he can blitz. Not a lot of production, only 1 sack in his career, but he can blitz. I've seen him disrupt the play. Not necessarily hit home, but disrupt the play. Weaknesses. Lacks the speed to be a single high safety. I like his eyes. I like his decisiveness back there. Some of those qualities make up for the lack of speed. And 4.55 isn't slow. I don't want you to think that. But in today's NFL, unless you are super proactive as a safety, you probably need to be in the 4.4s to be able to play single high safety and feel confident. If you're looking for an Earl Thomas was a 4.4 guy. 4.55, you may be able to do that if you have the ability to see what's happening and react quicker and beat the quarterback to the punch. I'm not sure he always has the ability to do that, so I wouldn't necessarily want to put him in that position to do that. Can be a liability in man-to-man. I don't think he trusts himself in man-to-man all that much. Plays very, very far off. Will give up things underneath, but he will be aggressive at times coming up. But I think he is more comfortable seeing everything in front of him and not necessarily coming up and running with a guy stride for stride. Sometimes he's overmatched when added to the box. At 209 pounds, He's a guy that's a little undersized when he comes into the box. And, tight ends and guards and tackles let him know about it. They bully him around. And could play with a bit more instincts in zone coverage. He does some good things in zone, but he also is a guy that, again, wants to see it happen before he reacts, which is another reason why I wouldn't put him as a single high free safety, because he doesn't trust his eyes all the time. He wants to make sure he's fully 100% sure. And it's rather safe than sorry at the safety position, but you're not going to make a ton of plays that way. So could be a little bit more instinctual in zone coverage. I'll give you an example. They're playing Alabama, and there's a shallow cross in front of his and going on behind him. There's no one else threatening him in his zone. He's free to just match that zone. He can run with this guy if he likes. And he sees it, and he knows he can do that, but instead he just decides to just keep guarding his one patch of grass over there, and Jerry Jeudy runs right by him and the other defender in trail technique and picks up a big gain. And he could have deterred the quarterback from going there. If he just takes off and runs with Jerry Jeudy, that quarterback's not throwing that pass. And instead, he just says, this is my spot. That's your guy. I'm going to stand here. And if we get beat, it's not my problem. And that's not how this works. So I liken him to Jaleel Adai, safety that was with the Chargers. And I like Jaleel Adai. I like him a lot. And I think Josh Metellus is a guy that I'll like at the next level as well. And so I see him as a solid player. I like this pick. And for me, it's a 3, man. I really like the selection of Josh Metellus here in the 6th round. Good value, good player at a position of need. Like the selection for the Minnesota Vikings. Now we get into the 7th round. They got 4 of them. And this is where you lose me when you're making selections. And you got a bunch of 7th round picks. You can miss me with that, honestly speaking. 7th round, 225th pick overall. Edge rusher out of Michigan State, Kenny Willekes is the selection. 6'3", 264 pounds, 34-inch arms, ran a 4.87 at the combine, which a lot of people feel like is his downfall. It's his lack of length and lack of athleticism. 16 tackles for loss, 10 and a half of which were sacks, 2 forced fumbles, no pass breakups, no interceptions, no blocked kicks in 13 games. For his career, 51 tackles for loss, 26 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups, no interceptions, no block kicks in 39 games. So I had him pegged as a late round selection. I did think he was worthy of a draft pick. Anywhere from the 6th to the 7th round, I thought you were fine taking Kenny Willekes. You get him in the 7th round, perfectly fine by me. I'll give you my player comp for him a little bit later on, but his strengths, relentless motor and effort. He's a high energy, high motor guy. That's how he's going to get a lot of his pressures. Plays with tremendous leverage. He plays low to the ground. I do like that about him. He usually wins the leverage battle, which means at the point of attack, he's usually stout and sturdy. High football IQ. Understands angles, blocking assignments, and how to effectively do his job. That's the one thing that you notice with him is he understands he lacks athleticism. He understands he lacks length. So he's got to win in other ways. And the ways he's able to do that are taking sharp angles to the football, pursuit angles, and knowing what the guard is looking to do here on this play. He's trying to pull, so he's going to knife inside of him and make a play. Or he knows, okay, they're not blocking me here, so this is going to be a quick 3-step drop. I've got to try to act quickly on this play. He understands what the offense is trying to do to him. Quick and effective hands off the snap. That is his meal ticket at the next level. If he's going to be a pass rusher that remains in this league, he's going to have to use his hands and fire off the ball with quick hands. That's when he does his best work. When he uses his hands off the snap quickly to defeat the block of the tackle, that's when he wins. Usually, if that doesn't happen, he's not winning a damn thing. Good secondary rusher. That goes with the motor that I talked about and him just not giving up on plays. He stopped at the point of attack. I talked about the tremendous leverage he plays with. That kind of goes with that. And he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He was overlooked going into college. He was a walk-on at Michigan State after being a high school linebacker and running back. He made the transition to defensive end after walking on at MSU. and he had to gain weight to become a defensive end. So he transformed his body while at Michigan State after being under-recruited, having to walk on, playing a different position. And so he's got that mindset, and he felt like he was going to be undervalued in this draft, and he was. So he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I want to see if he uses that to fuel him and motivate him. His weakness is not explosive at all, okay? That if you're looking for a guy with some juice off the edge, this is not the guy for you. Short arms limit him as a pass rusher. Also, it stops him from shedding in the run game. So again, he lacks the length. When he engages, he generally is locked into that block. It's hard for him to disengage because he doesn't have the length to be able to do so and keep a tackle or tight end at bay. Medical. He was going to leave after his 2018 season because he was dominant in 2018. And he broke his fibula, his left fibula in the team's bowl game. And so he ended up having to come back for his 2019 campaign. Probably would have been a much higher draft pick had he come out after 2018, after turning in a season in which he had over, I think, 20 plus tackles for loss and 9.5 sacks. He had a monster season in 2018. Better tackles keep him in check. And the thing that I looked at was, how did he fare against the better teams in his conference? I was looking for, what did he do against Wisconsin? What did he do against Ohio State? What did he do against Penn State? What did he do against teams that are going to have NFL caliber tackles across from him? And the answer is nothing. He did absolutely nothing. Watched him in those games against Michigan, lights out. They put him to sleep. And that's ultimately what scares me about Kenny Willekes is he'll eat up Western Michigan's tackle, clean him up for a couple sacks in that game. Or he'll eat up Purdue's tackle. He's not going anywhere. But he'll eat up Illinois' tackle. Yum, eat him up. But you put him up against some NFL caliber talent, and they'll put him to sleep. And that's what really scares me about Kenny Willekes. I said all of that to say this. And if he turns out to be this guy, and a lot of times my projections for player comps are on the high end. This is what I hope you become. Kyle Vanden Bosch is my projection for him. Similar size, similar DNA makeup. Vanden Bosch was a little bit better of an athlete, but I always remember the red contacts in his eyes. Crazy was Kyle Vanden Bosch, but he could get to the quarterback. We'll see if Kenny Willekes can do the same at the next level. For me, though, Kenny Willekes is a 2, not overly impressed, and I think he's going to struggle at the next level. We go to the next selection for the Minnesota Vikings in this draft, and it's 7th round, 244th pick overall. Quarterback out of Iowa, Nate Stanley is the selection. I'm going to be really honest with you, not a Nate Stanley fan. Did not think he was a draftable football player. I had him as a PFA, so was actually surprised he got picked. So that just goes to tell you how I feel about Nate Stanley right off the bat. He's got a lot of workable traits, but he's just too inconsistent for me. 6'4", 235, ran a 4.8 140 out of Iowa. 237 of 399, which equals out to a 59% completion percentage for 2,951 yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions in 13 games. For his career, 58% completion percentage for 8,240 yards, 68 touchdowns, 23 interceptions in 39 games. Again, I had him as a PFA, a priority free agent after the draft. He was my 13th rated quarterback in this draft. I had 12 draftable quarterbacks. He was just outside of that group. NFL quarterback build as we get to his strengths. He's got a lively arm. So 6'4", 235, that's what you're looking for at the quarterback position. He's got a stronger arm than you think. And when you watch him, it's frustrating because he short arms a lot of deep balls. He's either too far on the deep ball or he underthrows it. But he's got an arm. Clean mechanics. Man, does he look statuesque in the pocket. His drops, his footwork, his base from which he throws, his throwing motion, his mechanics, where he throws the football from, his platform that he's throwing from. Everything looks clean, man. My goodness. Looks good. It looks Carson Palmer-esque. Better athlete than appears. Look, he's not going to outrun anybody, but on boots and getting out of the pocket, extending plays to try to find someone, he does a lot better job than his frame would suggest he's going to. And I think that 4.81 kind of speaks to that. Can really make some quality throws, man. There's some throws where you go, hey, man, hey, not half bad, Nate. Okay? There's some throws in there where you look at Nate and you go, man, Nate, that was pretty damn impressive. And then there's a bunch of throws where you go, Nate, what the hell, dude? Shows some good touch at times. For guys with big arms, sometimes struggle with touch. And there's some throws where he's got some really soft touch, man, drugstore cotton-like. Can buy a little time to throw the shallow cross. There may be a blitz coming or a defender coming late, and he'll back up and with the strong arm, buy a little bit of time and get it to that shallow cross and allow that guy to run after the catch. Experience. This guy was a 3-year starter in the Big Ten. That counts for something, okay? Weaknesses. Inconsistent with accuracy. Man, it drives me nuts. He never hit 60% completion percentage in his career. Now, I will say this. To his defense, there's a lot of drops on tape. A lot of catchable footballs. The guys just didn't make the play for him. And that's the difference between him having a 59% completion percentage this year and a 60%, 61%. So, look, at the end of the day, he's just too inaccurate for me, period. Whether there's drops or not, he's just too inaccurate. Takes too long to process what's happening in front of him. There's times where he's got a good enough pocket to figure out what the hell's going on and make a throw, and he's stuck on his first read, and he's taking him too long to go through his progressions, and by the time he figures out, oh, my third read's open, he's taking a sack. And he had plenty of time to get rid of the football. That sack is not on his offensive line. That sack is not on his running back, who did a quality job of picking up a blitzer. He just took too damn long to survey the field and figure out what he wanted to do with the football. I'll give you an example, a real quick one. There's a play on a third down late in the ball game against, I want to say it was against Michigan. All right, and this is a game they lose like 10-3. It was a low-scoring affair. They had their opportunities. And his running back on a 3rd and 5 is open in the flats. If he gets it to him right now, he's open in the flats. He's got to be able to identify that this linebacker's got to come all the way from the middle of the field to cover him. There's a route combination that's going to slow him up. You get it to this running back right quick. He's going to be able to at least make this 4th and 1, possibly pick up the first down more likely than not. Instead, he takes too long to get to the running back. He gets to him late. And by the time he gets there, the linebacker's out there. It's incomplete. He just takes too long to get through his progressions and figure out what he want to do with the football. He misses the deep ball with regularity, man. The Minnesota game, even though they end up winning that game, all right, and it was a big win for Iowa late in the season, you just watch the first possession of that game, and you'll be like, God damn, man, 2 opportunities to make a big play early in the game, and he misses. And that's throughout his tape. You watch him, he just misses the deep ball way too much. He's got heavy feet, man. He's a clunker. Even though I talked about him being able to get out of the pocket, his feet are like lead. It's like they got lead attached to him, man. His feet are extremely heavy. So I think he could even be more mobile if his feet weren't so damn heavy. But at the end of the day, it's a 7th round pick. It's a guy that ultimately is going to probably be a backup quarterback in this league. Maybe for you guys here in the 7th round. As I mentioned, I don't love him. For me, it's a 2. I thought he was a PFA, a guy you could have gotten after the draft. But, get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. You spent the 7th round pick on him, not a big deal. I think he's a career backup at best. You move on to the next pick in this draft for the Minnesota Vikings. It's 7th round, 249th pick overall. Safety out of Mississippi State. Brian Cole II is the pick. This is an intriguing guy here. Out of Mississippi State in Brian Cole, man. When I watch him, he's one of those guys that I'm somewhat excited about. I'm not going to lie to you. Didn't really know what to expect when I turned on the tape and was pleasantly surprised with what I got. 6'2", 213 pounds, ran a 4.52 at the combine, 7.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass breakups, and interception in 12 games. His career stats, 10.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions in 17 games. That's the key there. If you caught what I just did, 12 games in 2019 played, 17 for his career. Let's chronicle his journey to 2019 and ultimately being drafted. So this is a guy that was sought after by Michigan in 2015, all the way back in 2015 as a wide receiver. All right, and for whatever reason, he transfers from Michigan and goes to a JUCO. All right. And I don't know what happened at Michigan. It is what it is. He goes to EMCC. All right, it's a JUCO East. If you've ever watched Last Chance U, then you know East Mississippi Community College was the star of the program that starred the show for the first 2 years. He went there for 2 seasons. All right, he leaves there, transfers to Michigan to Mississippi State. Has to sit out for grades. You know, if you watch that Last Chance U documentary, you know those guys did not do their work. A lot of those guys did not take the class portion of the school portion of their time at these JUCOs seriously, and it affected him because he had to sit out for grades his first year at Michigan, at Mississippi State. So then he finally gets on the field in 2018. Mind you, he makes the switch to defensive back and did that at EMCC. He only plays in 5 games because he has an upper body injury in 2018 that ends his season prematurely. So then he plays in 12 games in 2019, and that's where we end up with him. So very, very raw. All right. Strengths. Well-constructed defensive back frame, man. Made the transition from wide receiver to cornerback really seamlessly in terms of his frame at 6'2", 213. Adept at blitzing from the slot. Man, is he a hell of a blitzer. You watch him against K-State, and he just unloads on the quarterback. It's one of the best blitzes I've seen this offseason watching film, man. It was fun. Good at knifing into gaps and making tackles for loss. He's slippery, man. He's really slippery as a defensive back. And speaking of slippery, very slippery when approaching the line of scrimmage. So that's something he does really well, slithering into and knifing into the backfield and making plays. Fights to shed blockers on the perimeter to disrupt screens and quick hitters. You know, a lot of guys get blocked on the perimeter, don't get off of a block, and next thing you know, a quick hitter goes for 9, goes for 12, goes for 17. He's not having it over there. He's blowing up stuff. He's disengaging, and he's getting to a guy, and it's only a 2 or 3 yard gain, if that. He's still developing as a DB, so there is upside, and I'm excited about his upside. There also is some special teams value here. This is a guy that has experience as a kick returner, so there's still that wide receiver background there. Weaknesses, he lacks experience and he's extremely raw. I kind of chronicled that. The guy's only played in 17 games, and remember, you know, early in his career at Michigan, he was a wide receiver. He came to college as a wide receiver. So a lot of things that he still has to clean up. And that's the rawness that you're going to see. That's part of the reason he's a 7th round pick. His transition out of his back pedal hinders him in man-to-man situations. He's a little tight-hipped. His transitions aren't as fluid as you would like them to be. But I do like the fact that he's an ex-wide receiver, so he knows what these guys are trying to do from that standpoint. But I think he could be a little bit cleaner in his breaks and transitions, and maybe he'll get some help with that at the next level. He's still maturing as a defensive back. Keep that in mind. Lacks instincts as a run defender. I talked about how clean of a run fit guy Josh Metellus was. Brian Cole II is the direct opposite. He's not sure. He's very unsure of where he should fit in his run gaps and run fits. And he's a guy that just doesn't necessarily take the best angles when approaching the line of scrimmage. So that's something he'll have to work on. His instincts, but again, his instincts aren't going to necessarily be there because this is not a natural position for him. He's still learning. So I said all of that to say this. I really like this pick, and the fact that he's going to Minnesota, again, I keep harping on this. I know I do sound like a broken record, but I don't care. The fact that he's with Mike Zimmer and company, I like this pick a little bit more than I probably would have had this been another team. You know, in the 7th round for me, Brian Cole II is a 3, man. I really like this selection. He was pretty impressive, to say the least. And so we finally wrap up this marathon of a damn draft with the 15th and final selection by the Minnesota Vikings. In the 7th round, 253rd pick overall, offensive lineman out of Washburn, Kyle Hinton is the pick. 6'2", 295 pounds, ran a 4.88, 34.5-inch vert. This guy is a freakishly gifted athlete, as you can see. I think he might be a little bit bigger now. Might be 6'2" and 305, 310 or something right now. So, you know, give or take an inch or two maybe in terms of his height, whatever the case may be. He looks like a tight end. When you look at him, he looks like an oversized tight end. So we'll see what happens with him. But his frame is so unique. It's well put together, I will say that. 10 games at left tackle, 10 starts at left tackle in 2019. 40 games for his career, 33 of which were starts at the left tackle position. Strengths: strong, well put together frame. Like I just said, looks like a big, juiced, souped up tight end. Well put together frame, man. He hits the weight room and hits it hard, especially up top. He's a tremendous athlete. I talked about that already. The 4.88 40 tells you all you need to know. The 34.5-inch vert is just icing on the cake. And when you watch him move, I watched him catch a touchdown pass and score. This guy, tremendous athlete. Outstanding movement skills. Watched him get to the second level, take out 2 defenders, and was the key kick-out block to spring a guy for about a 65-yard touchdown run. So that was him getting to the second level, getting to a linebacker and a safety, and allowing that guy to take off and get to the end zone. Easily climbs to the second level. Again, I just spoke to that. The tremendous athleticism is on full display. He's an easy mover, gets to the second level with ease, and makes plays. Able to get to reach blocks and backside cutoffs without a problem, without a hitch, okay? Again, that speaks to the athleticism and him being an easy mover. Nice recovery. Has the ability to recover. I watched him on one play in particular. He pinches down inside. Quarterback adjusts to a blitz that was coming inside. He pinches down inside, and then there's a free hitter coming off the edge. He reacts to color, gets back to the outside, pushes that guy around, allows the quarterback to deliver the football. So has the ability to react. Nice recovery. Dominated the competition, and that's what you have to do. You play at Washburn and you want to make it to the next level, you better dominate the competition. He did exactly that. Weaknesses: his size, definitely going to force him inside the guard. He does, really, honestly speaking, I think he's probably more suited to be a center than a guard. But you already have a center, so probably guard is going to be more likely than not his position, and he'll probably offer you some positional flexibility as a backup center option if need be. If Garrett Bradbury were to ever go down, maybe Kyle Hinton is a guy that can give you some flexibility there as well. So he's definitely moving inside. He does not stand a chance of playing tackle at the next level. And to be honest with you, had he been bigger, had we been talking about a 6'4", 6'5", 317-pound tackle with 34.5-inch arms, you'd have been looking at a guy that would have been snatched off the board like Alex Cappa out of Humboldt State was snatched up I believe Alex Cappa was a 3rd-round pick, I think by the Buccaneers. And then Ali Marpet, a 2nd-round pick out of Hobart College, 2nd-round pick. These guys were dominant from smaller schools and were picked a lot earlier in the draft than Kyle Hinton. Why? Because they were bigger. They were bigger guys, and their frames translated over to the NFL. So level of competition obviously jumps out at you. But again, if you dominate, you dominate. And that's all I can ask you to do. That's the prerequisite for a guy at a small school. Just dominate the competition. And he did that. And then this is the thing that I think he's got a lot of work to do, and probably going to end up being the reason he ends up on the practice squad initially, is he just relied less on technical fundamentals and more on raw ability to dominate. Like, his hand placement is horrible. Like, his hands are all over. There were times where I saw him bear hug, and I'm like, how in the hell did he get away with that? Bear hugging, guys. His hands are all outside of the frame, and he's slamming guys on the ground, and these are holding penalties at the next level. And his hands are up by the face. His hand placement is just all over the place. It's frenetic, it's herky-jerky, but it got the job done, and it got him drafted in the 7th round by the Minnesota Vikings. With these kind of players, I usually just take a wait-and-see approach, but the athleticism, and this is the kind of pick you make in the 7th round. You take high-character risk guys, you take athletically gifted guys, you take injury risk guys. If there's high upside, you take him in the 7th round. I think he fits that bill as a high upside, athletically gifted guy from a small school. For me, he's a 2 to wrap up this Vikings draft. So we go from there to the final score for the Minnesota Vikings. It was a marathon of a draft, 15 players taken in all. It all amounts to, when you add it all up and divide it, a 3.13 on my grading scale, which you can find down in the description of this video. That amounts to a B- for the Minnesota Vikings in their 2020 NFL draft. It's a really well-constructed draft. 15 players is a ton, but for all the positions of need the Vikings had, I thought they did a good job of addressing them. throughout the course of this draft. They hit receiver early and often. They hit defensive backs early and often. 3 corners, a couple of safeties. I thought that those were, to me, the biggest positions of need. Corner, safety, and wide receiver, and they hit them all early and often. They addressed the offensive line with a couple of guys. They hit linebacker, which I thought was also a need. And you could also throw defensive line in there, losing a guy like the defensive end that I talked about at the beginning of the show that you lost, that decided to opt out of his final year of his deal. Getting another guy in there or two, a couple bodies in there to see how they fare out. I thought that was a good move on the part of the Vikings as well. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Make sure you follow me on IG, Louie T Network _ is the IG handle. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at Louie T Network on Twitter. Make sure that you're tuning in to the rest of this series and you're subscribing to the Louie T Network for more great content. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. If it's not your man T, it's not. I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. We're just getting started here on the draft wrap-up series, but we're going to move through this thing very quickly. So make sure that you're here and make sure you're in that comment section first. It's the you pick format. Be first. All I'm looking for is the team and the phrase next in any order. You guys know how this goes for those of you who don't. It's the you pick format. Simply be the first in the comment section to leave a comment stating 2 things. The phrase first and the team you'd like to see first. Doesn't matter how you phrase it, just as long as those 2 components are there and you're first, that team will be up next in the series. All right, Vikings get it kicked off. We'll see who's next. You guys take it easy. Stay safe. Have a good one.